Okay, we got a couple of cannons here that came from Fort Ticonderoga, New York. They weren't in their, didn't fit in with their theme too well, and they sold them off. So we wound up with them. It's a pair of what we identified as French 6-pounder naval guns, model 1786. And we found that in the original French drawings of the system 1786. And I think we'll be able to stitch some stills into this to show you those. But we're just going to call them number 1 here and number 2 for right now. And when we cleaned them up a little bit, we found something really interesting. They're still definitely French model 1786, and we'll show you that because of the other identification things we have are the trunnions, the marks on the trunnions. And number 1, we couldn't read any marks on that trunnion. It probably had them. We can read a capital letter N and some other letters, but they don't make a word as far as we can tell, so or at least there's not enough left of them to make a word that we can decipher. So that's 1 trunnion out of 4 that didn't give us any information. But this one was better, and in fact it was pretty clear. This one has the letter BA on it. See that, BA? Now that leads to the foundry of Ruelle in France. The other trunnion supposedly should have the letters RV on it, but I can't see that on there, so anyway, we're left with BA, and that means one of the 3 French Navy cannon foundries at the time, and this is in the 1780s, was at Ruelle, and this trunnion leads us to that conclusion. Now number 2, let's look at trunnions over there. We got pretty clear markings. This one is FN, and what that means, according to some experts I consulted, was the foundry of Nevers, and it really means like Fonderie Nevers, one of the other principal French naval cannon foundries of the time. This one has another mark, which might be the initials of the supervisor at the time, but we're not sure. DL. We're still researching exactly what DL means, but it's one of the marks used by the Nevers foundry. Now, we found out after we cleaned these up a little bit that these cannons had been captured by the British, which is the interesting thing I was mentioning about them. The way we found that out was, as soon as it got cleaned up, we found a British broad arrow, their military property mark, right up here. We'll show it at different angles because it's slightly rusted and difficult to see, but you can definitely see that it's a broad arrow with 2 wings and a tail, and that means the British captured this piece. They also put their weight mark on it in hundredweights. This is 15- I think 0-14. So to get the actual weight in English pounds, you multiply 15 times 112, 0 times 28, and add 14, and that gives you the total weight in English pounds. We also found quarter scale sights that the British had put in after they captured. If you see these hash marks, they're numbered from 1 to 3, bottom to top, on both sides, and they're used in conjunction with another mark on the muzzle. Line those up to the number of degrees of elevation you want, and that's a quick way of getting elevation if you don't have a quadrant. Now you also see the date 1786 faintly remaining, although corroded, on this cannon. And I think you see right here 1786. If you can see that. It's put in there in kind of a script almost, but you can read it. That's a French mark. Another French feature is the adaptation for a flintlock firing mechanism. That's this deep groove in the base ring and a hole. The hole is for what I call a rat tail flintlock. There's a steel tail that comes out the rear of the flintlock mechanism, which is otherwise brass with some steel in the cock and the frizzen. But this hole goes all the way through, and you stick the tail of the firing mechanism in there, and it sits flat on this in this groove, and it has a projection that reaches to the flash pan. This pan is part of the original French design. All their naval cannons, the model 1786, have that vent field, it's called, or flash pan, some people call it. So we'll go up and look at the other quarter scale mark on the muzzle. There's also British addition. This mark is the front sight of the quarter scale system. There's your front sight for alignment azimuth wise. And back here again, the British added quarter scale marks. They go from 1 to 3. And again, the date, faintly 1786, put on there by the French. Cannon number 1, you also see the quarter scale marks. These cannons were apparently captured and processed together. You can see very faintly on this one, 1786. Really only the 86 is very visible, but since these two were processed the same way, they were probably together forever. There are the other quarter scale marks. They're on both sides of what we call the base ring. Now here's the weight mark for cannon number 1. 15014 is the way I read it. And again, 15 times 112 plus 0 plus 14. There you go, 14. You're going to get the total weight. And the broad arrow also on this one. Getting a little faint with time and corrosion, but if you look carefully, it's on there. Let's see. Right up here. Here we go. Broad arrow mark. Put a little bit of light on it. And it's identical to the other one. It has the rat tail flintlock firing mechanism adaptation that's French, and all the British additions that I mentioned on the other one, including the quarter scale marks. Here's a quarter scale front sight. You can see that. There we go. The bore is a little over 3.9 inches, which is a French 6-pounder. And these are very large for any kind of 6-pounder gun, but they were naval guns, remember? They were iron, so they had to be a little heavier than bronze to withstand the pressure. But they also didn't want a lot of recoil on the deck of a ship. So these things are quite heavy for 6-pounders. The weight works out to around 1,700 and some pounds each. And that's over 300 times the projectile weight. Or almost 300 times the projectile weight. A very light cannon is about 100 times the projectile weight. A heavy cannon is 300 times the projectile weight or more. So anyway, here's the pair, number 1 and number 2, of the French 6-pounder naval guns were captured by the British. And we think they might have been captured at the Battle of the Nile, where there were 750 French cannons known to have been captured among almost a dozen ships that were captured, French ships that were captured by Admiral Nelson at that time. So we'll take another walk around and see what these guys look like. They have some corrosion from being around for so long, being out at sea for a while. We don't yet know how Fort Ticonderoga got them. We're working on that part of it. These cannons, as I said, they weigh over 1,700 pounds each, and the length of the barrel, the nominal length from this point, the rear of the base ring, to the muzzle is about 79 3/4 inches. And we're going to check that against the specified length in the French documentation, but I'm sure it's correct.